Welcome to another episode of Grace Under Pressure, where my guest today is Alden Mills, who's a very special guy, and I'll tell you all about him in just a moment. Those of you who watch the show know that we talk to thought leaders and doers like Alden, whose ideas and actions are helping us come to a better understanding of ourselves. Grace Under Pressure reveals the too often things that we dismiss, like concern, compassion, commitment. Grace, for me, is the generosity we show, the respect we demonstrate, and the compassion we give to others. And when you do it as a leader, especially in our challenging times, it requires that ability to act for the benefit of others and mobilize the team for good results. It's my honor to welcome Alden Mills. So welcome, Alden.
John, it's great to be here, and I've been so excited to talk to you. I love your GRACE acronym, being an acronym guy myself. So I love what you're doing.
Thank you. I'm going to tell folks a little bit about you. Alden is located in Marin County right now, but he's a West Coast guy. He grew up at age 12, and according to his bio, he suffered from asthma, which he did not hold him back because he became an athlete, a world-class athlete. He was a gold medalist in the Olympic festival and captain of his Navy freshman team and varsity teams at the U.S. Naval Academy, where I guess they know something about rowing. Maybe not the Army guys, but at least the Navy guys would. So it's a shout out to you all.
Thank you.
And then he became a Navy SEAL, which not very many people can do. Very cool. We'll talk about that. After discharge, he became an entrepreneur and grew a business called Perfect Fitness. And it was an Inc. Top business and grew at an annual rate of a mere 12,000% annually. A mere 12,000%. And one of the fastest growing consumer product companies in the world. Developed over 40 patents, but now he's focusing his energy on leadership development. He speaks widely, or at least he used to speak widely, as did I, but none of us are. We're doing it virtually now. He's got a couple of books, Be Unstoppable, 8 Essential Actions to Succeed in Anything, and Unstoppable Teams, the 4 Essential Actions of High Performance Leadership. He's been a frequent guest on cable shows and network shows, and even a show like mine. So I'm honored. So Alden, welcome. So
thank you, John. Thank you. It really is. I mean that. It's great to be here.
You serve on a lot of boards, and you're still very active in the business community. We are in crazy upside down times, Alden. What are you hearing from colleagues and clients about where they're going?
There are 2 general things that I hear a lot about. And one is, oh my gosh, look at all of this crisis. Look at all of this uncertainty. The world's going to hell in a handbasket. Lots of negativity, right? So I'll hear a lot of that. And then the other one I'll hear is, how do I keep my business growing and staying healthy while we're working remotely? Cool. Those are the kind of 2 main buckets, right? And I really want to kind of parse those 2 because a lot of times it's very normal for people in times of crisis, which I really just view as a shock from certainty to uncertainty very quickly. And there's a natural inward thinking that we'll do. We'll start to look at, oh, look at me. Oh my gosh, woe is me. And then that's that selfish piece, right? But then once you start to pull your head above and look around and go, okay, wait a minute, I think we can make something work here. Then you start asking the questions, all right, well, how do we do this remotely?
So how do we, when you get the naysayers and the negativity, what do you do to shake them out of it, or do you just not worth bothering?
No, I can't let that go. I will first kind of, knowing that we're not going to be in person most of the time, really try and shake them into the reality of the situation that there is always an equal amount of opportunity that comes with uncertainty. It's a law of nature. It's always there.
In fairness to these folks who are maybe negative, do you think it's coming from fear and they're really a perceived inability to cope? So,
I think every stopping force that we butt up against, its basis is fear, without question.
right. Well, and then that leads into my next question, because you served our nation as a military officer, a naval officer, and a Navy SEAL. So it's a big question, but I'll just let you throw it to you. So, what from your experience as a SEAL is relevant right now?
All of SEAL training and all of the things that we go through that are so intense are to do one thing: to keep us calm during crisis. The moment we start to get in that fight or flight mode where our amygdala fires and we let fear take over, we know, right? If you start to learn more about neuroscience, you'll know that the amygdala, that little almond-sized portion of our brain, shuts off our prefrontal cortex, and our creativity goes out the window, and we become very reactionary.
Right.
That's exactly why they do so much live fire training with us. They want us to embrace that fear and be aware of it, and then keep us calm under pressure so we can think and be creative when it counts most.
That's very powerful. So, anything, but how do you, I mean, do you master fear, or is it coping with fear? So,
So first of all, fear is always with us. I don't think you demolish it. You never eliminate it. I have always made me feel comfortable when I am fearful of something, because then I know that my senses are activated. The biggest failures I've had in my life is when I either totally tuned out the fear or was so relaxed about something that I wasn't really paying enough attention to it.
that's
So
interesting.
fear of somebody.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, I once worked with an executive who was being groomed to be a CEO, actually, but his heart, he was really, he was a manufacturing guy, and I referred to him as a smoke jumper. What he really liked to do was jump on airplanes and go to where factories were having problems and, immerse himself in it. And I said, that's a great skill, but you can't be the CEO and be a smoke jumper. So, how do you balance it? Because you are a very successful entrepreneur. How do you balance those two? So,
Well, the first thing is, as an entrepreneur, entrepreneurs and dealing with crisis, those go hand in hand, right? Because an entrepreneur is actually creating a crisis of sorts. And that is, and again, remember what my definition of a crisis is. It's a flash of uncertainty. It's this unknown, right? So entrepreneurs like going into the unknown. They like saying, okay, how do we figure out certainty in this unknown? When I transitioned from being an entrepreneur to what I'd call an intrapreneur, when I sold my business and then worked for a much larger business for several years, that's a different mindset. That's a mindset of, hold on a second, I've got to bring everybody with me. And some people, when you bring in the new idea, which could be bringing in crisis, because people are like, whoa, 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 I like what we had. Why are you changing everything up? Then you start to realize what I call the 3 S's of a crisis. And they are, you first have to deal with people's safety, because they're all looking inward. Am I still going to have my job? What happens to me during work from home environment, right? Everything goes inward. You then have to create a structure that then moves them to a place of service where they start serving others. And when that happens, they go from being selfish to selfless.
Alden, you raised. Oh, I mean, you raised a really important question, because I hear it a lot, and we're in this time of ambiguity. And if I'm a leader and executive, my employees, what they want from me, frankly, is certainty, but I can't deliver that. So, what do you tell leaders you work with?
The very first thing is authenticity. I don't try and pretend to be something I'm not. Don't try and pretend to say, oh, the enemy's not around. It's fine. Come on. Let's go out there. Or the water's safe to swim in, even though there's shark fins all over the place. No, You give them the authenticity of, I'm going to give you my very best. I don't know what tomorrow is going to hold, but I do know that if we focus on what we can control to the best of our ability, we can make the best out of this day and move us forward to where we all hope to be. And let me tell you where I hope to be and what I want all of us working towards.
Okay. And so that's a way you're creating clarity. Am I correct in that? So,
Correct.
great. Great. And so what about the structure? You mentioned the structure. Is that something, is it immovable or is it flexible? So.
The way I've always viewed this structure is that it is, first of all, understanding that safety for every individual on your team is different. Some value safety and like, oh, I'm going to be fine if I don't have my healthcare insurance. I just need my pay, right? Others are going to be like, wait a minute. Everything about this, their safety is completely encased around them. So the structure then becomes the certainty and the consistency of what you do to either show the communication, how we're going to continually take care of you. And once those things start occurring, they start to realize, oh my gosh, they care for me so much. I'm not going to worry about behind me. I'm going to start thinking about what's in front of me. And that switch of saying that person, that leader has my back, therefore I can look forward and have his or her back, that becomes the switch.
And I'm going to guess that's where if I'm looking forward or feel secure enough, at least to look forward, I'm going to be more creative. Am I correct? So,
correct. That's right. So I would say, that element of showing how much you care leads to getting people to dare.
Correct. One of the key things in success in anything, of course, is preparation. From your experience in the military, I know there's a famous saying that preparations, we prepare, but plans go out the window once the first bullet is fired. How does that relate? I think that's kind of where we are right now.
Yeah. Every day is different, right?
Yeah. Well, if you look at our year, I mean, none of us envisioned this in January 2020. And then we've had three. I mean, we've certainly had the virus, economic and social injustice, all of these things. And plus where you are right now in California, massive fires. So, I mean, anything else going on?
I'm sure. Wait until tomorrow.
Right. So, well, it makes life interesting, but how do you keep focused?
Well, first of all, answering that question that you asked about preparation and why even do it if it's it's going to go out the window is because the preparation gives you focus. Focus then builds up your confidence. And, we often in SEAL team would say that we'd spend 95% of our time planning for the 5% of, that could go wrong environments. The idea that when those things go wrong, that again, physiologically, our amygdala is not freaking us out. And we're like, oh, okay, that's plan Bravo. Go. Now, I use the term plan Bravo because that's exactly what happened during the Osama bin Laden raid. When the helicopter went down, they literally, the commanding officer on site said, moving to plan Bravo, as calmly as I just said it.
Yeah.
And that's what the proper planning does. We don't have that, then we start to freak out. Then everybody else freaks out because a leader's a mirror and it reflects on everybody else.
Thank you. Part of the essence, I think, of the training that you went through as a SEAL, but also as an entrepreneur, certainly all the challenges, is resilience. So what lessons in resilience do you share with others?
Resilience can come in a couple of forms. The resilience of you personally, and then resilience of everybody on your team. The number one thing that I always talk to people about first is it always starts with how you lead yourself. How you lead yourself becomes a reflection of how you lead others. The whole key around resilience is what is it that you are serving or fighting for? Why do SEALs go to such extreme lengths? And by the way, it's not just SEALs, it's all kinds of special operations forces, from Green Berets, Force Recon, Delta, Ranger. We have a wonderful array of special operations. Why are they so successful? Why are they so resilient? Is it because they just love the flag more than others, or they're more patriotic? No. What they do love, and they've spent years and years building tight bonds with, are their teammates. And that part of that resilience comes from the love of who they really care about and who they want to fight alongside for. So the same thing can go for a parent or somebody who's leading their company. Like, they've become so cared for with all of their employees that they'll go to the ends of the earth for those people because they feel like they're family. And one of the key cornerstones to resilience, if you really boil it all down, to fight fear, you fight with love.
Oh, delve into that. What do you mean you fight fear with love? Explain that.
Fear is the opposite of love. Some people will say, no, it's hate. I'm like, no, it's not. It's fear. And the only way to totally consume fear is to do something that you are so passionate and loving about that fear doesn't stand a chance for it.
So
it's how you overcome any kind of fear.
It's being part of something greater than oneself. So that's powerful. So I've always thought of resilience as that ability to bounce back from defeat, face adversity. But I've learned in doing this show, Ellen McCarg and my friend Jesse Lynn Stoner talked about resilience as you're not actually bouncing back because you're coming back to a new reality. You are transformed, which is an interesting concept. Does that resonate with you, Alden?
Well, I love that. And when somebody is saying, oh, wow, I really need some resilience, I light up and say, oh, this is fantastic. You are being introduced to a new struggle that's going to build you new strength. So I don't want you to think of yourself as resisting. I want you to go forward and embrace this, because this friction is what will help us move forward. So don't think of it like trying to resist. Embrace it, and let's go forward into the battle.
That's a good concept. And I think it's particularly apropos for us because, we're now beginning, I hope, to shape our new normal. We're not going back to January 2020. We are transformed by this. We're in the cauldron, or the crucible, as Warren Bennis used to talk about. And all great leaders go through that. And the challenge for leaders, I think, is to bring everybody else along with you. Would you not agree? So
correct. I totally agree. And how you do that goes back to first reminding them, hey, I've got your back, right? Understanding their safety needs, building out structure that they can follow and get along with for certainty, and then getting everybody to serve together, because that's what's going to get you through the valley of the shadow of darkness.
I can sense from you your passion and commitment. And I can see you as an officer, as a leader, an entrepreneur, and as one who's very authentic. How do you deal with screw ups?
You mean for me?
No, for the team, whatever. So.
Well, the first thing, that I'm very human about this. I've made way more mistakes than I've ever succeeded. The key is, when we make the mistakes on the team level, or when I make the mistakes, is to call out, hey, I just figured out a new way that things didn't work. Make sure that everybody else knows that way didn't work, so we don't repeat it. That's the frustrating thing, is when people start repeating the same mistake. I'm totally fine with making the mistake, but let's make sure we've reflected on this so we don't repeat it and communicate it to everybody.
And by you taking the lead in, hey, I'm vulnerable, or you're saying you're vulnerable. No, I've made a mistake. So that sets the example for others. Am I correct? So
yeah, absolutely.
Great. So what role, because I can think of the SEAL teams and be an entrepreneur. You have to be strong and tough. Where does humility come in, or does it? So.
Oh my gosh. I had this wonderful commanding officer in SEAL team, and he was really a philosopher. Like many SEALs in there are philosopher, kind of warrior monk like attitudes, and this was one of them. And he pulled me aside right before I was going on my first set of missions, and he said, "Alden, do you know the hardest thing in SEAL team as a leader?" And I'm like, "No, what's that?" "Following this piece of advice. Only ever be as tough as the situation dictates." Now, when you think about that, that means you're not walking around with your chest all puffed out, walking into the library going, "Look at me, I'm the biggest, baddest person in the land." No, you walk in the library and say, "Hey, what kind of poetry we have to read today?" Right? It's going in with that. And when you have that humility, and by the way, once you start really getting out into harm's way and you realize, ooh, I'm as human as the next person and I bleed like anybody else and I don't know everything and I need to learn from other people. When I walked into any one of my platoons, I was most of the time one of the most junior from an experience level on the platoon. And the only way I could succeed was having the humility of saying, "Hey, chief, hey, first class, second class, third class, petty officer, how do you do this? How do you suggest we do this? I want to hear from you. Are we going the right path?" And when they find out that you're open to their input, that's where you can have the magic.
And let's put this in context. If I'm correct, you are the officer asking for help from the non-commissioned, correct?
That's correct.
And that's a powerful lesson too, because I think sometimes too many executives, kind of think they have to have all the answers, and they don't.
No, and actually, it's way more valuable when they're the ones willing to reach out and look for the answers, because then people go, "Oh, wait a minute, you mean that person is actually reaching out? They respect me enough to understand? Oh, I want to help contribute more to that person because that person wants to help me succeed too." And then it just comes back.
Have you ever worked? I'm going to guess the answer to this, but have you ever worked with an executive, maybe a fellow entrepreneur or whatever, who says that if I do what you just said, if I ask my quote juniors or subordinates, they're not going to have any faith in me? What's your response to that? So.
I take your R from Grace, and we have a long conversation about respect and ask them where it really comes from. And I was like, look, respect can come from two places: authority or actions. How long do you think respect from authority will last you? And where do you think people really rely on that? Well, those are dictators or tyrants. And how do they get that? Through fear. Where are you going to get your respect from? You're going to get your respect from actions, and people are going to respect you because they love what you're doing and they love how you are handling the situation. That's how you're going to win.
That's great. That's a powerful story. I like that. I'm going to throw this. It's kind of a lob question. I never know where it's going to go, but you're in the leadership arena like I am, and discussion of it. I'm not a former Navy SEAL. I never wore the uniform. But,
yeah, we're all leaders, John. We're all leaders.
What do you think we're missing in today's discussion of leadership, Alden?
So it's going to go right back to, again, the R of grace with the respect. A lot of people forget that respect isn't just a two-way street, but how do you truly get respect is by inviting the conflict in. When you invite the conflict in and embrace the conflict, remember, we're also searching for that friction because that makes us better, but you invite the conflict in, that leads to confidence, that then leads to contribution. To me, that's what the idea about respect is really all about, is that you're creating a mutual respect in your environment where you end up developing contributors You may not take their point of view, you may not accept their idea, but they now feel heard, and they feel heard from their point of view. And that's hard to do. That requires your other C, compassion, right? I would turn your E into the energy of the empathy that's required to do that. That's hard. Yeah. There isn't a lot of empathy right now. There's not a lot of mutual respect. It's one way or the highway. Yeah. And why are so many people frustrated? Because they don't feel like they're being heard. They don't feel like their voice matters. Right. And they're trying to do all kinds of destructive things to get the attention.
That's a very valid point. We lash out at fear when we are feeling disenfranchised, and that we don't have any stake in it. We feel we don't have a stake in the enterprise. So what the heck? I will act out or act on my base.
Nobody cares, my point of view, so they're not going to care when I do this thing either.
Yeah, great. Good shot. As a leader, from your experience, both as an officer or as an entrepreneur, and what you do now as a coach and developer of others, is what about our role in what makes us human? What makes us tick, do you think, from a leadership standpoint? So,
the biggest thing that makes us human is our heart. It is about our heart first and foremost. Now, you may say, that's kind of odd coming from a Navy SEAL. Let me tell you something. SEALs, all spec ops, were, first of all, huge huggers. We all and by the way, football players are. Lots of pro athletes are. You see them always hugging each other. But no, it's all about the heart. And we're one of the few human beings, or few beings out there, that actually has something called care reciprocity. We have something where, unless you're a psychopath, there's a very small portion of us out there. Doesn't even really come into effect. But when you do something nice for somebody else, they will turn around and either do it for somebody or maybe even to you, right? That's the service of others. And when we start that process of serving others without expectation of return and doing it because it feels good to us and it's the right thing to do, that's when we get ourselves into a cycle of better performance and fulfillment for everybody else on the team.
That's great. Great thought. Alden, this has been a good conversation, but as I always like to ask our guests as we wind down, is there an example of grace that you've observed or in your own life that you would wish to share with us? So
there is I've lots of stories of grace, but a recent story that I just love is I was reached out by a young lady from Montana. Her name is Sophia. I think she's now 14. She's a karate champion. And she said, Mr. Mills, I've read your books. I love what you speak about. I'm wondering if you will help me inspire all the kids my age in the United States and live legit. And I said, who is this girl? And we ended up having a phone call, then another phone call. And then she recruited a professional hockey player and a professional MMA champion. And we all signed up. And we all said, okay, Sophia, we'll be your speaker series. And let's do this to help kids live legit, which she made an acronym out of. That is all about keeping kids off of drugs and being their own leaders. And to me, that is such wonderful grace from the next generation of what gives me so much hope for the future.
What a remarkable young woman. She would, maybe she's still a teen, but she will. What a remarkable individual. Why? Dream big, but act for the benefit of others. Boy, that's grace right there. And remarkable. Alden, how can people find you? So
they can go to my website, alden-mills.com.
Great. You've been a terrific guest, and I say thank you. I appreciate these stories are great, and the insights are wonderful. So thank you.
John, thank you, and keep living with grace, my friend.